Jim Mahan is running for governor in the 2012 Republican primary, and he's here on the show as our very special guest. Thank you, sir, for dropping by to discuss this campaign of yours.
Thank you for having me.
What led you to enter the Republican primary for governor? Because even you admit everyone thought it would just be Pat McCrory.
Yeah, they sure did. I'll tell you why I ran, and I really shouldn't have to run, Kelly, but with things the way they are, and we're just ready to crumble in this state and in this nation, and I feel like I've got actually more background than all the other candidates put together.
When did this idea come together for you? I mean, because it costs some money and it costs a lot of gas to travel this state campaigning for governor.
Yeah, it does. I tell you, there's several things that caused me to run. First of all, I ran for the House in 1970 in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and led the Republican ticket, but it was a year that the Republicans lost. And I decided back then I was going to run for the House, and then 4 years later I was going to run to be governor of North Carolina. But I thought, you know what, since I lost the House race, I really don't have to run for governor because these people are saying they're going to keep everything straightened out and all that. Well, it appears now it's not straightened out. And I guess really the thing that really got me into this race was, and I didn't decide until 3 days before I filed totally that I was going to do it, and then I never looked back. But I was in church, and the preacher said, Jeremiah 16:6. It's the road that you're supposed to take, and if you don't take that road, then you won't get any rest. So that was one marker of my decision. And another marker of my decision was I was in Wendy's restaurant, and this little newborn baby kept staring at me, and it never blinked. It just stared at me. And pretty soon the mother was staring at me, and the baby and the mother were staring at me. And it was almost like I could see that little baby saying, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do in this state? And then the other factor is my sister is the most careful person I know. And she's got a burglar alarm in her house. That house has been broken into 4 times. She went to her bank, got mugged at the bank and robbed. She went to her son's wedding in New Jersey. And she said, Jim, would you mind going by and checking my car? So I go by her house and I go to the neighbor. I say, where's my sister's car? And she says, well, it's in the driveway. And I said, well, it isn't. So the car had been stolen. So we've got the crime rate is just rapid in this country and in this state particularly.
Who do you hold accountable? Is it a lot of Republicans blame the long-term Democratic leadership. The Democrats are now saying Republicans are going to run this state off into the ditch. If you've read the editorials and all the advocates going back and forth on this, are you wanting to bolster the Republican majority that is in this state now? Or are you bringing a different kind of Republican in if it's you sitting there in that governor's mansion next year?
Well, I tell you how I feel about that. When I was at East Carolina, I was president of the student body, and I helped Dr. Leo Jenkins do the primary groundwork that we did to become a university. And then I realized we were not getting the votes to become a university, so when we made all the other schools universities, then we got what we wanted. Now, for my work at East Carolina, also I found that the communist speakers were running rampant on the campuses back in the 1960s. And I had an effort in getting all of that stopped with the communist speakers. Well, in light of that, Dan Moore, who was the 66th governor in North Carolina, who was on the Democratic side, he invited me over to his inaugural ball as a Republican, and I went in as his honor guest. And I thought, you know what, there is a way to work together with people, whether Democrats or whatever. We got 9,444,127 people in this state. And that's who I'm running for. I'm really not running against anybody. So, you know, I'm happy that Pat McCrory is in the race. And I know he's been running 8 years and he's got a lot of money behind him. But I really don't believe that's what the people are looking for this year.
I was looking at your local newspaper, the news at Norman.com. It serves Denver, North Carolina. And you told them you could eliminate unemployment in North Carolina in 185 days after you take your oath of office. 185 days, awfully specific. How do you do it?
Right. Well, first of all, I don't believe anybody has a program, a platform, if they cannot put a time on it in goal setting. And the way that I'm going to do that is I've got a very unique plan to do that, and I'm reluctant to tell you because I know the other candidates pick that up when I talk about it. But my effort in doing that will be, first of all, we've got a tremendous amount of talent in this state. We got to start making things again. We got a lot of people who are great upholstery people. They're great craftsmen. So I want 100,000 people to start their own business, and I'm going to help them with that through training facilities. My background is a trainer. You know, I've probably trained thousands and thousands of people, maybe more than, you know, all my other candidates are running here for this office. So that's part of the effort right there. The other thing you'll notice in my platform is that I'm going to partner with the real estate industry. I've been a real estate broker for over 30 years now, so I understand that industry, and I want to partner with them in a buy a house campaign. So that puts more people to work. And then the building industry. I've been a licensed builder now for over 30 years. So I want to partner with that industry and get that going.
Is the goal 0% unemployment, or is it that effective unemployment rate that they always say is between 3 and 4%?
Yeah, we've got over 400,000 people, 450-some thousand, depending on which numbers we look at. So I'm working with that 400,000. There are 50,000 people in this state that are either disabled, don't want to work, won't work, and I'm going to try to get them to work, but I don't know that I can. I've had some retired people come to me, they're real concerned. They say they're going to vote for me, but they say they're real concerned I'm going to put them back to work also.
In a culture where most people want to graduate from school and go get a job working under someone else, how do you convince 100,000 of those people who think that to start their own business?
You know, I think because I think the talent is out there, it won't touch everybody, but yet some of those may be touched in the construction industry or the real estate industry. One other thing that I'm doing also, if you'll notice, the banks and lenders, I'm also a real estate broker, list property, sell property. I've got one loan right now that we've been trying to close since November. So it's 4 months. The underwriters are just totally ripping us apart. And I know that it went the other way and we got in trouble. But now they've gone so extreme the other way that, that we're having trouble with that. So what I'm doing is I'm requiring all lenders, when they've got an acceptable loan, that they should close that loan in 30 days. If they don't, I'm going to put them on a slow performance list. I mean, I won't ask them to leave the state, but I'll put them on a slow performance list.
Well, you're jumping ahead on my question list. I'm just winding down the list with you, but your platform is varied. We talked about that off camera. And I go by what I perceive to be the order based on how I read about you and what you've told other reporters. Prayer in public school is, very simply said, it's a very complex policy in practice. Explain your particular policy for putting prayers back into the public schools in North Carolina.
Okay, I'd be happy to. First of all, when it was taken out back in 1963 by one lady who stood up and didn't want her 9th grade, her son, to be exposed to prayer, we've been in decay ever since then. We have got to stand up for prayer. If we don't stand up for prayer, we might as well stay seated for everything else.
Would it be optional for if a kid didn't want to stand up or didn't want to pray, would you not hold it against them if they did not during prayer time?
No, they could have a moment of silence and do their own approach to that. Now, you'll also notice in my program that I was totally paralyzed in 1985 and told that I would never walk again. And I asked the doctor if he had prayed for me, and he said he hadn't. So I asked him to pray. And then after he prayed, he came over to me and he just pats me on the head and said, "Now, Jim, you prepare for the wheelchair tomorrow." I said, "Doctor, do you not believe I can be healed?" And he said, "Jim, you need to prepare for the wheelchair tomorrow. They have therapy that starts." Well, that night I was visited by a nurse in a solid silk outfit, blonde hair, no cap like the other nurses. Jumped out of bed the next morning, ran up to the nurse's station, and I said, "Who was that nurse in my room last night with a silk outfit, long blonde hair, no cap?" They said, "We don't have anybody like that. Get in that wheelchair there. You're supposed to start your therapy day." I said, "I don't need that therapy." So that prayer was answered. And I had another occasion for that to happen.
So faith, if I'm hearing you correctly, is a tremendous part of your personal life and is a tremendous part of this campaign for governor.
Yes, it is.
Now, let's move to the economic plan. Tell me more about your public-private partnership you would engage in with the real estate industry, the Buy a House program. How does that work? How will it work for North Carolinians, the rank and file North Carolinian?
Okay, and you notice also that we'll do that in 1 year.
1 year?
Yes, and there again.
How do you do it in 1 year?
If we don't set a goal for it. Well, the truth is it'll never happen if somebody doesn't stand up and say, "Let's do it, and let's partner, and let's put a time on it." Without a time on it, it is no goal.
How does it work?
Okay, the way it works is I approach the real estate industry and I promote from the governor's office. You know, a lot of this, quite frankly, Kelly, is just that people are looking for a little direction. They want somebody to tell them, it's now time to buy a house. There's people out there that are lined up to buy houses. and they'll come out and look at houses, but for whatever reason, they go back and they'll hear a newscast, they read a newspaper, and they think, well, maybe I need to wait a while. And I'm going to tell them it's time to buy it.
As governor, promote buying a house,
yes.
Using that bully pulpit. Yeah. Now, back to your idea of forcing banks in North Carolina to approve all qualified loans within 30 days. How does that fit with the conservatism people expect out of the Republican Party and out of its candidates? Because that seems like a government mandate on industry, and from what I've covered down in Raleigh, is this hands-off approach is what's driving the wagon right now.
Yes, that is very true. Now, you will also notice that this is probably going to be the most exciting 4 years that this state has ever seen. And I'm really not just interested in this state. I want to make this state a model state that 49 other states will want to become a part of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Now, also, we're being played with on the gasoline. Our biggest export in this country, in this state, is gasoline. We sent out $100 billion worth of gasoline last year. We sent out, as we sit here, we sent out 122 million gallons of gasoline. Well, third grade math teaches us that if we send out that which we need, what we have left is going to cost us more. So I'm demanding that the oil refineries send every motorist in this state $550 as some restitution, and then lower the gas price in this state to $1.75 and let us lead the nation on getting our economy going. 33
months is a deadline you're also setting after you take the oath to make North Carolina public school teachers the highest average paid teachers in America. A budget could do that, but how would you pay for it?
Okay, and that is not the highest average pay.
No.
That is the highest paid.
Okay.
Right now, Texas and California are the highest paid. Well, obviously, I've got to get the real estate industry going. I've got to get people working the building industry, so then we have some revenue that we can do that. But I tell you, I've been a school teacher. I was Teacher of the Year 3 times. I was Coach of the Year. And I learned things about education when I was doing education. And for so many years, I would hear educational governors say, we want to be average. We want to get our pay up to average. Well, you know what? We never reached average. If a football coach is average, he's 6-6, and he's no longer the coach there next year. You know, so why not shoot for a higher number than that?
You're big on motivating students, and you have a few ideas for motivating positive reinforcement. One would be you give your private telephone number to 100 school students throughout North Carolina.
That's correct.
Which type of student would qualify to be able to call the governor directly?
Okay, I want all types of students. I want a mixture of students. I want some good students in there. I want some difficult students in there, so that I get a cross-section and a feeling of those students. I tell you where all that comes from. When I went down to a little school in Red Springs High School, and I taught for about 15 minutes. I gave it my best thing. I thought, you know, I've been a motivational speaker. I've traveled 40 states. I've started 6 different companies. I've competed against Mary Kay, Elizabeth Arden with a little company. We were selected to sponsor Miss Rodeo America. I had all that going for me. So I taught about 15 minutes, and this little kid on the right here drops a book. They're all watching the clock, and this little kid in the back stands up and says, puts his hands on his head and says, we don't like the way you teach. Now, I stood there and I looked at him for a little while, and I thought, well, I hadn't unpacked my car yet. I could go out and get in my car and leave. But I looked at him and I said, you know, I don't either. And he was so shocked he's probably still standing down there. But the truth is he did graduate, and he said the prayer for the senior class when he graduated, and they made me the chaplain for the class. But I learned something. That class left except one guy stayed back behind. And he comes up to me and he says, don't you leave us. And I said, why are you saying that? He says, well, we had 2 other teachers this month. One of them stayed 1 day, one of them stayed 2 days. There's a lot of things that are going on there. That little kid came up to me later, and he was misbehaving a little bit. And I said, well, maybe I should talk to your father. He said, well, my father's in Raleigh. I said, oh, you live with your mother? He said, no, my father's in the penitentiary in Raleigh. He killed my mother.
So you think it's important to have someone who can encourage an at-risk youth, that they can get the diploma, they can move on, they can get a job they want, they can have what they want. That's big for you.
That's big.
Is the state just in the dumps? Because you want to do a telecast that's motivating the first day of every school month. Yeah. I mean, is it that bad out there? Are we that discouraged?
Well, I visited a school in Charlotte recently where I had taught and was Teacher of the Year there for 3 years in a row. On that next day after that, they had more police in there because someone had been killed, and they had 5 high schools in Charlotte where they felt there might be gang activity. You know what? We have tried every way in the world, Kelly. We've tried prisons. We've tried every discipline kind of a thing for prisons. It hasn't worked. The only way we'll ever solve the murder rate is to get people so they don't want to inflict harm to somebody else. One murder is too many if it's in your family or my family. One's too many. I don't want to see it drop 10% or 50%. That still leaves a lot of people dead. I don't know what they're doing with all the bodies in Charlotte. There's so many of them being shot, killed over there, and they keep saying the murder rate's down. So I don't know where they're putting those bodies.
Finally, you say if you're elected, you only run 1 term and you're out.
That's correct.
Why not 2?
I believe that most people, some people, have good ideas for 4 years, and that's it. There's no more ideas after that. I've put my heart in this. This is very creative. I've never seen a platform like that. So I think just to go 4 years and get it done and get out, I might want to walk on the beach after that. You know, I just think that let me give it 4 years. Let me give it the best that I've got, day and night. You know, that's 1,460 days. That's 35,040 hours that I'm willing to put into this state.
That's Jim Mahan. He's running in the Republican primary for governor here in campaign 2012. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahan, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.